All right, peeps. On today's 100th episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering dope questions from the Patreons. Lots of gems, lots of depressing martial arts conventions, lots of... The Kung Fu Genius is great and all, but he ain't in the Hall of Fame like I am. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts. Watch out!
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine and dandy, Seafood.
So this is totally our 100th episode.
Totally the 100th episode.
It totally wasn't the interview with Jim Rosalando I did yesterday.
It totally was not.
Which will come out after this episode
Right.
so that this one can be 100.
Exactly.
It totally wasn't that episode.
No.
Yeah, this is definitely the 100th
definitely
episode.
the 100th
100%, not 101%.
100 episodes of KFG.
We've knocked it out the box.
I didn't think we'd last 2 episodes. After that first one with you, I'm like,
Wow.
what the hell?
How do you
How
know
is
that
this
we
happening?
didn't last 2 episodes and this hasn't been just one massive fever dream or Dryson hypothetical?
Totally right. We might be stuck in a Dryson hypothetical that we
What
can
was the
never
first
get
thing
out
you
of.
said? Fever dream?
Yes, a fever
I
dream.
like how he goes back to the most. A fever dream?
What's a fever
Explain
dream?
to me your fever dream.
Fever dream. What's a fever dream? I never had a FIFA. FIFA dream
FIFA
about...
dream?
a
You think about
FIFA
watching the
dream
World
about-
Cup?
Yeah, exactly. Football. Yeah, it's a dream about football.
Yeah.
Dre. Yes.
Soccer.
No, a fever dream is when you sick with a fever and then you
you
have
have-
weird dreams.
Yes.
I've
Yeah,
never
because
had that.
your brain is cooking.
I've never had a fever. Or I've never had a fever dream.
I got a fever and there's only one prescription for it and that's more cowbell.
Wow. So anyway, for those of our audience watching us on YouTube as opposed to
Yay.
listening to us, I am wearing the new official KFG
podcast
T-shirt with the logo. As many people might have noticed in the last few episodes, we have updated the logo for Kung Fu Genius. We have moved away from the Shaw Brothers.
So with that,
Run Shaw sent me a cease and desist letter.
you're lying.
Yeah, even though he's dead.
From the grave?
Yeah, he sent it to me himself. Too. It was
he
weird.
He
wrote it
ran
in
to
the
you
grave.
to
Yeah.
get it.
He
Yeah.
wrote that shit
Yeah, he
in
ran
the grave.
to me. All right, he ran Shaw to
went-
me, and told me I got to stop doing that. You know why?
Why?
Because
Because-
he said it was unethical because he stole that logo
Yeah.
from Warner Brothers.
Yeah, so
All right, so how dare I steal that from him?
maybe he took the same letter that Warner Brothers gave him and he used
he
it.
just
He
passed it on.
repurposed it.
Yeah, he just he just changed the names.
The font.
Yeah, changed the font.
And changed the logo.
Changed the logo from Warner Brothers lawyer to Shaw Brothers lawyer. Right?
I love it.
Yeah, how Run Shaw got away for so long, having totally shamelessly stolen the Warner
Insane.
Brothers logo,
Yeah.
is beyond me. But man, the Shaw Brothers were
How?
very, very smart.
You know who's the loser in this? Warner Brothers. You know, 'cause
Are they?
Yeah.
I
'cause
don't think they lost any
would
money
they-
because of Shaw Brothers.
You think so?
No.
I mean, which company's still around?
Well, technically, Shaw Brothers is still around, but
Yeah.
as TVB.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Why would you go there?
Transvestite Brothers.
Listen to him here.
What?
Unbelievable. You're going to get yourself canceled. All right?
What for that?
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
know what
God.
it is?
Yeah.
This is going to be like, and I know by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be old news. It's going to be like, I'm Alex Jones and you're Kanye.
Hey. Take it easy.
Yeah,
Wow.
you know you're off the rails when Alex Jones has got a Kanye.
When he's the moderate one.
When he's the moderate one, all right?
Oh my God.
All right, cool. So anyway, the new KFG podcast logo is now available on
pretty
on t-shirt.
lit, too. I
Yeah,
like-
these are nice. These are those Bella canvas V-necks. These are the nice ones. So we have them available at City Wing Chun at citywt.com. That link is in the description for this episode, so you can get yours. And
While they're hot.
While they're hot, if we even have any left by the time this one comes out, because this episode's not coming out for a few more weeks, and so we've already been selling the piss out of these things. What you got for me, Dre?
What you got? Patreons.
Patreons. All right. Yes, of course, because our Patreon supporters always get first dibs on questions. So, here comes the shameless plug again for Patreon. You know, when you guys support us on Patreon,
Shameful.
not shameful. You might be shameful.
I'm full.
I'm
He's
shameless.
totally
I'm
shameful.
shameless.
Full cup of it.
Yes, the our Patreon page. You can support us for as little as $5 a month, and you get episodes early. Usually, these episodes premiere on Monday, And Patreons usually get them by Friday or sometimes Saturday at the latest, so they already have them for a couple days. And there's also other goodies that I put on the Patreon page as well. Many people who follow me on Instagram know that I have a Instagram OnlyFans. Sorry, Instagram subscriber platform. All right, now I keep calling it my Instagram OnlyFans. But that might
Do you have an OnlyFans?
I should though.
Not yet, he doesn't, but I'm
KFG
working
Yeah,
on
Mikey
it.
Deane wants me to have an OnlyFans.
Yeah, there's going
right?
to be a KFG After Dark OnlyFans. Everyone needs to know
That's
this.
right.
And
It could be-
yeah,
don't
so-
be fooled. His Instagram OnlyFans does post thirst traps.
It could be before dusk.
So I don't
as well.
I don't post thirst traps
Yes, he
on
does.
my Instagram subscriber only. I post about once a week. I'll post a Wing Chun tip, a little lesson, something. Sometimes it's basic stuff like Paxa, or sometimes it's follow-up techniques, or how to do things on the dummy, or theory, or why multiple attacker training is bullshit, or why you need to throw that rattan ring in the garbage can. But about every week I come out to 1 to 2 with 1 to 2 tips on Instagram. But now what I've done for my Patreons, if you support me on Patreon for $5, which is also the same price as the Instagram subscriber thing, I will also post the Instagram subscriber only content for our Patreons. So basically, if you really want to support the Kung Fu Genius in an efficient way,
just go Patreon.
Go to Patreon, because you get both the Instagram stuff and you also get the episodes early. And I do also post like occasional random goodies on my Patreon that I don't have elsewhere, like some Hong Kong demos and things like that that I haven't posted elsewhere. On top of the fact that Patreons get first dibs on any questions. Here Topher is one of our Patreons, and so we always
He's
get
one of the OG Patreons.
OG's back from Dudes of Kung Fu days. So anyway, if you want to support us on Patreon, the link is in the description below. We definitely appreciate that. So what do you got from our Patreon supporter Topher?
Hey everyone, just want to let you know Wing Chun Illustrated is now offering a paperback edition through Amazon, reaching a larger global market. And no, they're not ditching the glossy magazine edition through MagCloud. You can now simply choose the version of this magazine you prefer and the one with the cheapest shipping wherever you live. Order your copy of Wing Chun Illustrated today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping for Prime members. Go and check that out.
Hey, Alex Sifu, and the whole KFG crew, especially Mikey. What's that
Thanks,
about?
Topher. I love you. I'll pay you
What
later.
is that about? What are some of the most common misunderstandings and misuses of kicks and footwork you see in Wing Chun? Thanks for all of the great content. Tea and biscuits. Love, Topher. I don't get the tea and biscuits
Oh,
reference.
I do, and I really appreciate it. When I come down, we'll have lots of tea and biscuits, my friend.
Yeah. Biscuits are what people from his neck of the woods call cookies. All right? They call biscuits cookies, just so you know.
I almost
You know,
spit my
biscuit
coffee
actually
out,
comes
my
from,
bad.
it's like French for twice cooked. Biscuit. So it's like biscuit. It's become English as biscuit, but it's actually like kind of, related to the French
This
language.
is
Means
way
it's
too
twice
much
cooked.
culture for this podcast
what
here.
the
All right?
hell?
All right.
Way
For the
too
record,
much culture.
we do have cookies as well. We just don't call them biscuits. We call them cookies.
What's the deal with the English breakfast? I had an English breakfast in London, and it had that what's that?
Everyone goes on about this. It's the blood sausage. I
Yeah.
talk about black pudding. First of all, black pudding is awesome, and I say that.
I
as an
miss
excellent
black
teacher.
pudding though. I should have some again. Have you ever had this black?
I thought
pudding?
that was your nickname, Black Pudding.
That's
No?
you do not need to bring that up.
Well, I
My
think
past is my
you might have brought
past.
it up once or twice.
No,
Yeah,
but
that's
my
right.
past is my past.
Okay, all
let's
right.
keep that in
Anyway,
the past.
let's
All right,
keep
then,
it going.
black pudding.
Let's
Even though I did bring up the black pudding.
let's keep it moving here.
Okay, what's the question?
All right. The misuses or misconceptions about kicks. all right?
Yes.
Well, maybe not so much a misuse of the kicks. By the way, it's a great question because I think that the kicking techniques in Wing Chun are very underrated. Partially because Wing Chun is supposedly a style that doesn't emphasize kicking, and so we kind of have this weird reputation hung on our style because it's like, oh, Wing Chun, they don't really kick, or they don't have a lot of kicks, or whatever. So then it's almost like Wing Chun people have to bear this reputation of being a style that doesn't have a lot of kicks, or have a lot of leg work, or a style that doesn't kick well. When I feel that it's a bit of an unfounded reputation.
My hips don't say
All right.
that.
Yeah. Of course, the thing is that Wing Chun doesn't kick recklessly. So in other words, we don't just kind of bounce around and throw our legs out as a jab to test the distance, right? Because Wing Chun fights at close range, when we lift our leg, we want to be absolutely certain that we're going to kick the target and kick the target with power and kick the target in a way that if the target suddenly moved or changed, we wouldn't be out of position. So that's part of the reason why we emphasize that kind of very upright way of kicking, that if I kick my opponent and my opponent were to suddenly move or deflect my leg, I'm not leaning into the kick where I'm going to fall forward. I can convert my kick into a step and then immediately go in as if I meant to do that. You know what I mean? But of course, that takes a lot of practice. And being able to kick powerfully from a upright position takes a lot of practice. You need to stand in front of the wall bag, train your single leg stance, be able to do repeated kicks without dropping your leg so that you develop the single leg stance strength. It's not just about the strength in the leg that's kicking, but it's also about the leg that's supporting you, right? Your kick in Wing Chun, because of our upright stance, we basically stand vertical and kick. Your kick is only as strong as your supporting leg. So that's why we go through great pains to improve the single leg stance kicking ability on the wall bag, on the dummy, through our forms. And so I think because of that slightly difficult aspect of Wing Chun kicking, that we're not leaning into the kick or falling into the kick the way some other styles do, it requires this additional stance training to get good at it. And I think that a lot of people who don't go through that and then still try to kick using quote-unquote Wing Chun kicks don't kick well. And then the thing that gets the blame is the style.
You know what I find interesting? That in MMA, there's a kick that looks like our front thrust kick. They have a different name. What's the name they call this kick?
You mean like a teep?
Teep? Well, teep has that.
Teep is from Thai boxing, and it's basically the front kick from Thai boxing, and they use
the
the ball
same-
of the foot.
Okay.
So we don't use the ball of the foot. We
don't-
use the
yeah.
heel.
No, I
so
think
so we don't
different kick.
extend the hip the way they do in the teep. We keep our hip back. You know, just because if you extend your hip and you miss, it's much easier for your opponent to take your back in that kind
You're
of
thinking
situation.
more of like the push kick, because when I did
I'm
Muay
thinking-
Thai,
I'm
I
thinking
did
more
something
push
that was
kick.
more along.
Yes,
akin
yeah.
to
So
that
you
kind
have
of
that as well. In general, when most styles do a front thrust kick, whether it's a teep, a push kick, a front thrust kick from karate, they usually extend the hip on the kicking leg side a little bit forward, which means even though it's a front kick, you're still slightly bladed. And that's something we avoid in Wing Chun because, again, if that kick misses or the person swipes it to the side, you fall forward, the guy's got your back, and then you're on the ground before you know it. So we kick with our hips square in the same position that we do, like the way we punch with our shoulders square. So that means that you have to have the confidence to be able to kick with power from that position, the stability to stand on one leg in case your kick misses. And you also have to realize that this kick is a much closer range kick. All right. Our Wing Chun front thrust kick is done at a range much closer than a front thrust kick from most other styles. So there's a range adjustment when we use our legs. And sometimes Wing Chun people, if they don't have enough either sparring practice or practical training or even just hitting a moving target, usually they might know, like from a technical standpoint, okay, in Wing Chun, when we do the Chum Kyu form, you turn, your weight is on the back leg, you lift the leg without your upper body moving, you kick, the upper body doesn't move, all that stuff. They can do all that when they do the form or maybe even when they, do solo drills or something like that. But then when they're sparring, and then there's a little bit of stress and pressure, suddenly that goes out the window. And that is not a knock on the Wing Chun kick. That is a problem of the person has not trained this technique under the stress of sparring, and then that's why it falls apart like a cheap suit, not because there's necessarily something inherently wrong with the way Wing Chun kicks. As a matter of fact, when you look at a lot of, like you mentioned, some modern MMA fighters, you're starting to see a lot of Wing Chun-like kicking being thrown in. Like what they call the oblique kick, which is that the one you're talking about?
I think so.
Just basically a front kick to the knee. Oftentimes it's done with the rear leg. John Jones does it a lot.
Yeah.
The toe is turned out just like we do in Wing Chun whenever we kick the legs. And you start to see these things. And
Why
then
is that
even
called
like
an oblique kick?
because Joe Rogan has decided that this is a new MMA technique, and this is not something that martial artists have been doing for eons, right? And sidekick, lead leg sidekick to the knee. Even though we don't bounce around necessarily in Wing Chun, but like a lead leg sidekick to the knee is definitely something we do in Wing Chun. Definitely something you see in JKD or Bruce Lee, kind of thing, right? And so you're starting to see more of that lead leg sidekick to the knee, rear leg, quote unquote oblique kick to the knee. You're starting to see more front kicks in general.
Sweet.
And things of that nature, right? So it requires an adjustment to make sure that all kicks have an optimal range that they work at. And sometimes Wing Chun students that lack experience, or maybe they had previous experience in karate or kickboxing and then they come to Wing Chun, when they start sparring, especially if they spar a little too early before they developed enough skills to use what they've learned instead of to default to the old factory settings, they will then suddenly start doing the front thrust kick out of range, right? And that's the reason why you can do sparring drills with beginning students where, you start feeding them a straight punch and they got to start defending this, but you do it within the parameters of an exercise, even if you're progressively adding more resistance and speed and stuff like that. But a student needs to have a certain amount of basic skills before you can just say, all right, just go put the gloves on and go. Because what always happens to people when they're under stress is, we get into this kind of amygdala hijack where our kind of reptile brain is kind of hijacking our logical brain. And, you start just kind of doing things out of instinct. And if you have not had enough training in whatever new style you're doing, you're going to revert back to either your previous martial arts training, or if you have not done previous martial arts training, you're just going to revert to doing whatever the hell to survive, because you're not in martial arts practice mode when you're in amygdala hijack. You're in survival mode, right?
Is that amygdala?
Amygdala. All right? Yeah. So that's why you need to make sure that you have enough skill and enough basic confidence in those skills to start adding some pressure to it. Otherwise, it's just going to devolve into what you did before, which doesn't make any sense. If you're in a Wing Chun school, you start sparring and you go back to your karate stuff just because it's more familiar, then you need to practice a little bit. It's not that there's something wrong with Wing Chun. You haven't done Wing Chun enough to start relying on those things in sparring, right? That is a normal problem, right? Yes. And so I think that sometimes the Wing Chun kicks, so to kind of come back to Topher's question, is that there's a lot of lip service given to Wing Chun kicking techniques, where the shoulders don't move, kick without warning, shadowless kick with the heel, all this kind of like stuff that kind of makes a Wing Chun kick unique, the way we thrust, the way we don't retract our leg after we kick. Once we kick, we drop the leg, and we use the leg to bridge the gap. So that's why we say like a kick is a step is a kick. We don't kick, pull the leg back, and then have to step again to reach it to our opponent, right? That means you have to cover the gap twice. Once we kick our opponent in the leg, the body, the knee, whatever, that foot goes straight down to the ground, and then we bring the rest of the body behind it and use that to close the gap. So all of those things are great, but they need to be practiced in a context of sparring so that the student feels comfortable using that under stress, so that all of these beautiful platitudes about how awesome Wing Chun kicking is also translate into the real world when we spar with them. So I think, it always comes back to one of my favorite lines, which is not my line. I read it on a forum many, many years ago, but you've heard me say it many times, which is the difference between practice and theory is bigger in practice than in theory. So the Wing Chun kicks work beautifully in theory, and they also work beautifully in practice, but you need to practice them enough to get out of the theoretical part of understanding how, you can lift your leg and kick your opponent without them seeing, because of this, the way we have a rear-weighted stance, but then also be able to do that in the timing of someone rushing you and coming at you. Right. So that's the thing. It always boils down to the beautiful sounding platitudes of the kicks can also be realized in actual fighting if the student practices them in sparring, does them with different types of equipment. The moment you start doing the Wing Chun front thrust kick with a kick shield,
where your partner's moving around. You know, we do those kind of drills all the time. Your partner holds a kick shield.
Kick island.
Yeah, kick island. They rush towards you, right? And while they're rushing at you, you
a
basically
fun
have to
one.
try to stop them with the kick, right?
Yeah.
What this means is, you know, your one partner comes at you kind of quickly, then the next time comes a little more slowly, then really rushes at you, and then you do it with someone else who's a little bit bigger. So you constantly have to learn in real time how to make adjustments to your kicks while someone is rushing at you. And that is just one application of the Wing Chun front thrust kick. But the moment you get the targets to move, the heavy bag, kick shield, partner, that's already going to add the kind of novelty you need to turn the dead knowledge of the kick from the forms and the basics into something alive and transferable. So it's always down with the practice. The Wing Chun kicks are gorgeous, close range kicks, really intelligent stuff, especially when you go into the advanced levels, kicks, kick sweeps, trips, binds, shin binds, all sorts of cool stuff you can do with the legs that work beautifully if you practice them, and you can do them.
So you say it's down with the practice. Is it always also down with the sickness?
Well, sickness can be a practice as well.
That was for all my new metal fans out there.
In theory.
Yeah. Well, when you launch a kick well, all right, and someone's like, wow, and they look at it like, wow, the kick looks amazing. You did it quickly, and then you just look at them with cold eyes and you say, witness the fitness. All right? Okay, so what else you got for me?
You got me down with the sickness, bro. Sick. That was a sick kick.
Thank you.
That's what I always tell you.
I know, I was there.
Yeah. Next up, we got Mark Pena.
All right, we got another
No,
Patreon.
my bad.
Mark Perna?
Mark Perna.
All right, there we
My
go.
bad.
Yeah.
I took that R, made it a.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
changed his nationality with
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
letter.
All right.
That's what's up.
So here's another Patreon. All right, let's go.
It is another Patreon, just so you know. I'm probably in the minority,
Probably.
but I really like your interviews.
Oh, yeah, me too, because I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to see your
Hey,
face.
what the hell?
No,
That's
you have no
That's
idea.
not what he means.
No, that is what he means.
That is
I did
not what he
We
means.
did an interview with Jim Rosalando yesterday. I mean, the interview came after this because this is episode 100.
That's
Yeah,
no, that's not true.
and
That's
you know,
that's theory.
we talked about the history of Wing Chun and Leung Jan and stuff like that. Really, really interesting stuff. And what's great is that unlike my podcast with you, I actually learned something.
That is
I like
that is unfair.
I like interviews
You know why it's unfair?
because I get to learn something.
You know why it's unfair?
Why is it unfair?
Because
Why I feel like he's making something
oh,
up in
oh,
real
yeah, no,
time. He doesn't actually know the end of this thought. All right, he opened his mouth first, and there's no end to this thought.
He doesn't
Or
want to
beginning.
waste the perfect comeback
Right,
on you,
yeah.
but he's just trying to think it
Yeah,
up.
that's right. With his bumblebee lumberjack ass over there. All right.
Andrew, you can edit out all that airtime,
No.
that thinking time.
Yeah, that thinking time. All right. So let's get to Mark's question. All right.
All right. Really like your interviews.
Me too.
That's all he says.
I like him better than.
That's all
than
he
this.
said.
Yes.
That's all he said. This one is no exception. His book is genuinely great addition to the Bruce Lee archive. I'm assuming he's talking
Talking
about
about Steve Carriage.
No. I think
Or
he's
is
talking
he talking about James
Dr.
Bishop?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I can't tell because you didn't let me know.
Yeah, well, I'm about to get to
Yeah,
it.
okay. Do it. Do it.
Cataloging the sources for his notes probably should have been done 40 years ago. It would have been a much bigger job back then without the technology Bishop used.
Right.
My question is, do you think Bruce would have ever published his notes in some form or another, or were these really just for his own edification?
That's
Another great word.
That's really difficult to say. Edification. Everyone,
Dre just learned a new word.
No, dude. Everyone who is a Bruce Lee fan knows the word edification.
Are you serious?
It's in Enter the Dragon.
So what you're trying to say
Yeah,
is that
Han.
Dre isn't a Bruce Lee fan?
No. Han says it when
Han.
he's asking Roper who he wants to fight. If he wants to fight Bolo or he wants to fight Bruce Lee.
Right.
This morning's edification. That is the first time everyone heard that word. All right. And everyone.
So it's not a real word?
Everyone who is a Bruce Lee
Is
fan
that a
will
real
use
word?
like
Mikey Deane?
this morning's edification. It's just to sound much more intelligent.
What
than
does
they
the
are.
word mean, Mikey Deane?
He's English. He doesn't know what it means. I
love it.
All right.
Well,
love it.
let's put it this way. I don't know the Webster's dictionary definition of it. You know what I mean?
But you know what it would entail.
I would absolutely know.
Okay.
It's because
In the
so much
context.
of language is all about context.
Yes,
Right,
it's
context,
all
yes,
about the
yes,
context.
yes.
It's just like watch the film again, see what the context is, and then you'll
It's like
find out.
it's like what Dre doesn't get.
Yes,
Context.
I'm always screwing up
Yeah.
the context.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So, well,
Beat that
I don't
ass.
know. I mean, this is a very good, this is a very interesting thought experiment. You know, we always have, this thought experiment always comes up in
I
one
love
form or
thought
another.
experiments.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that'd be your thing, thoughts.
Thinking
I mean?
is the best.
No. I mean, thinking is the best.
Yeah.
No, thinking is the problem.
Okay, sorry. I just one more interjection before we get to this. I saw something today, or not today, but last week, that apparently about 50% of people don't have an internal dialogue.
50% of people?
Yeah, 50% of people.
They don't
walk
have the
around-
guy in their head who's talking to them?
Am I one of those? Are you trying to imply?
I just looked in your
You
direction.
ever listen into a shell and you hear like the ocean?
Yeah.
You imagine that's what actually sounds like inside Dre's head?
I have to create internal dialogue. I'm one of those, I gotta say.
Okay.
If you could go inside Dre's head, you would
Yeah.
just hear
And it's
like a
it's-
vast desert.
And you know what? I don't take that. I take that as the highest compliment. Yeah.
He is what the Zen Buddhists call. He has reached the point of no mind.
And
take long.
there's nothing wrong with that. Huh? It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful place to be.
What's your internal dialogue saying right now?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. Give us that.
Yeah, better do that
Listen to him tell Andrew how to do his job.
one. Such a diva.
Yeah, I know. Such a diva.
The director.
Yeah.
Oh, give us that.
Well, people don't realize I'm technically grooming Dre to take over as the Kung Fu
That is
genius.
not. That's hyperbole.
No, you know what? I love how he doesn't really know what that word means.
And I will use
Yeah,
it. I will use it in that right context.
Yeah, I
in
don't
the
know.
wrong context.
One day,
you just stop.
you are going to be sitting in here.
That is not happening.
There's going to be someone else sitting there.
There will
You're going to
not
go, "Yo, Dre,
be a
how you
day.
doing, man?"
No, there will not.
And
be a
then
day
people are
that
going to ask
happens.
questions, and you are going to give these amazingly eloquent responses about the problems of Chinese martial arts training in the modern society and how
not going to
how it needs to be reformed and all these
That
kind of
won't.
things. And you'll have all these hot takes on
No.
Bruce Lee and cocaine and not always in that order. And
No.
No, this
People
is-
do
this is
not
like
want that.
This is the Bizarro Superman storyline, right? You are Bizarro KFG.
Yeah.
There's going to be a time when
Dre,
I'm recording this.
Dre, one day I will fly away and you will be the KFG. All right? It will not always be me. Someone has to take up the mantle of the KFG.
And
And
that
I'm
would be
looking-
Mikey Deane, because
I'm looking
Mikey
at this-
Deane has
He
much more
barely
eloquence.
knows what edification means, all right?
He does not
He has a
need to
feeling.
know.
He has a feeling of
He
what
does
it
not need
means.
to know.
All right?
KFG is going to be Dre for
Yeah.
a day, and you're going to have to answer questions.
Oh yeah, we actually did propose this as an episode idea, that I will be Dre for a day and you will be the KFG. You will have to answer the questions.
That is a silly idea. It's so silly.
That it's really great.
It is
People
really
do
great.
not want that.
It is really great.
Maybe we should get back to the
people-
question.
People
Okay.
don't want it.
So
I can't-
KFG
no.
KFG audience, do you want an episode where I am Dre for a day and Dre has to answer the questions? Write in the comments below. Let us know. All right?
It's going to be really easy. I can speak for the audience. The answer is absolutely yes.
It's
Absolutely.
going to be a
yes.
terrible episode.
Yes. We could call it the
I'm just giving
Bizarro
you
World KFG.
heads up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bizarro.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm not going to, just like when you do it to me, I'm not going to give you the questions in advance. So you're going to have to answer that shit on the fly. All right? I'm not going to allow you to prepare. Because you don't allow me to prepare. You throw the questions at me. I have to answer
Why
them
would
in real
I
time.
allow you to prepare?
Yeah.
That would take
I'm
all
the
fun
Kung Fu
out of it.
genius. But now we are training you to be the Kung Fu genius.
Yeah, well.
All right? Dre, you've been around me.
I've been around you more than anyone.
More than most people.
More than your children, I think.
Maybe. All right? Wow. And
10 plus years. Maria's 10?
yeah.
Well, I got to argue. Yeah, Maria has been around longer.
And
But
you should know
Yeah.
all the stuff. I've told you everything, Dre. Every single story about Yip Man, Bruce
I
Lee,
will
Wong Fei Hong.
literally- yeah.
Everyone. You know all the stories, Dre.
I've heard them enough.
Dre, they're inside you.
They're
All
in
right?
there.
Just like Mr. Miyagi said, your best karate is still inside you, all right? The best KFG stories are still inside you, Dre. All right?
KFG is inside you, Dre.
Yes. All right.
Hey, the
Just remember.
what?
All right. The KFG
Hey
is
to the
inside you.
yo.
All right. Okay. So
Hey.
anyway, we got to get back to the question. All right. So
This guy.
these questions are really
Who let
great
that guy in?
because it's always the eternal thought experiment of what if
Yeah.
Bruce Lee did not die. You know, because this thought experiment can be set a number of different ways, okay? It can be proposed a number of different ways. You can, you know, what if Bruce Lee didn't die, and then you go into what would have happened to his movie career, Game of Death, this, that, what would he have done? What would he think of this?
He would be
Well,
writing plays.
What would you think about, hey, you're not supposed to talk about the fact that Henry David Huang is secretly Bruce Lee.
Everyone knows this,
All
though.
right.
It's so obvious.
Everyone knows
He has
it,
the
yeah.
Tom Cruise-isms.
Dude, the person who told me that conspiracy theory, I just like he was so dead serious. He's like,
He has the Tom Cruise-ness.
yeah, he's like, you know, look,
Right? The center
he's like,
tooth.
suddenly
Center line tooth.
Henry or David Henry Huang. I said Henry David Huang. I said
Yeah.
David Henry Huang
Yeah.
became a playwright, and he's secretly Bruce Lee post death, right?
It's obvious,
which
though.
is ridiculous because Mr. Huang had a career while Bruce Lee was still alive. But anyway, the guy who told it to me was like so dead set that this was like true, right?
Wow.
And the funny thing, I mean, for people who don't remember, this was a story from our season 1. There was a KFG fan who very seriously claimed that David Henry Huang, the playwright from like, you know, M. Butterfly and all that stuff, was secretly Bruce Lee. You know, Bruce Lee had, you know, assumed his identity or whatever, right? And then, you know, he told me this. And then the funny thing, I think the most interesting part of that story was...
His tooth.
No, it wasn't even that. It
no.
was the fact that while I was telling this guy how ridiculous this theory was,
Yeah.
I had temporarily forgotten the fact that I had actually met David Henry Huang. Okay? And I'll tell you something, all right?
Yes.
The KFG is many things,
Yeah.
all right? KFG is one thing for certain. The KFG is a Bruce Lee fan, okay? And I'll tell you, Dre, if I met a dude...
Bruce Lee's inside of you.
Right.
That level.
Yeah, I've reached that final level.
Yeah.
Your mind, body, and soul becomes one. You know, it's a sacrifice.
Shit.
It takes hard work. It's a way of life
Yeah.
when you got the glow. You feel as one when you got the glow. Your mind is one when you got the glow.
That would be a great guest.
Yeah.
So you're saying that your LIDAR wasn't going off?
No, my LIDAR was not going off. I'll tell you, Dre, all right? People always say, what if you, like, secretly found out that
Yeah.
Bruce Lee was alive? Or what if you bumped into someone on the train or whatever and you talked to this person?
Yeah.
And you realize this person is Bruce Lee, all right? So I'll tell you one thing, all right? If there's one person to sniff out Bruce Lee, if he were still alive,
Yeah.
that dude would be me, okay? Because I have 2 superpowers.
Oh, no.
All
We
right?
know one of them.
You know one of them, all right? My ability to spot any kind of fake hairpiece or hair implants, wig, toupee, whatever, on a man from at least
Yeah.
3 miles away,
Wow.
all right? If you have one hair implant on your head and you're 10 city blocks away from me,
Just one?
I will smell it.
Yeah.
There's someone with a hair plug right there. Boom. Okay. All right.
Wow.
You cannot wear a toupee, a hairpiece, hair implants, hair plugs. If there's any fuckery going on your head, I don't care how much money you spent on it. I don't care if you spent Burt Reynolds toupee money on that shit. All right. I have a superpower where I can see from a mile away the best fake hair covering for
What
men.
about hair dye?
Oh, I see that too. When old dudes like dye their hair black.
Yeah.
But I think anyone can see that.
Yeah,
That doesn't
you're right,
take a
you're
special skill. All right. Okay. My second skill, superpower. All right. Even though my first superpower is kind of useless. All right.
No.
My second superpower, all right, is I can spot celebrities in the city when they're all completely dressed down, trying to be on the down low. All right, because you know in New York,
That is a great
I mean,
superpower.
It is a great superpower, right? So
That is a much needed.
because in New York,
Yeah.
they're
all over.
they're all over, and
They're
and
all
what they
over.
like about New York is in general, local
They
New
think they can
Yorkers
blend in.
leave them alone. Partially because they can blend in, and also
Yeah.
partially because local New Yorkers are going to be like, yeah. If someone runs up to them screaming like, "Oh my God,"
They're
it's
not a New
usually
Yorker.
it's a tourist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's
I
And-
have that superpower as well, funnily enough.
Yeah, and I see them all the time. Like even just
man.
catch them out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, "Oh, look, it's so and so."
You know, I think-
even when they're wearing hats, they're trying to
I
disguise.
suspect Brendan has that superpower as well because he
No,
sees
no.
them.
Because Brendan
constantly.
works at a fancy restaurant that celebrities go to. That's
Yeah.
why. They literally go to his place of work, all right? That's not
Not
it.
superpower.
He didn't spot,
No.
Dave Chappelle because he was like, oh, wait, Dave Chappelle literally comes to his restaurant, all right?
all right, that makes
So,
sense.
yes, that's a little bit different.
My
right?
bad, Brendan.
But, like, I've seen, like, I saw Alan Rickman in Bryant Park once. And he
Alan
was,
Rickman?
Alan Rickman, yeah.
I don't remember who Alan.
You don't know who Alan Rickman is? Die Hard? What? Are you kidding me?
The name I don't
Gruber.
know.
Hans Gruber from Die Hard?
I know the
Yeah, also
I
from
know.
Harry Potter, all that stuff. Yeah,
that I know.
Yeah, so I saw him, and he was like kind of like trying to disguise him. David Hyde Pierce from the TV show Frasier.
Yeah.
he's Niles, the brother.
Yeah.
yeah. One time I saw him, and he was totally like trying to disguise himself.
tried.
Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick. I saw them like totally dressed down here in Midtown walking. Harry Belafonte in front of my school.
Oh, that's super
like,
cool.
No, like literally, I walk by and I see them right
Yeah.
away. I have like just an eye for that. Doesn't matter how dressed down they
Something
are. Right?
goes off right.
If there was a dude that would recognize Bruce Lee still alive in the wild, I tell you, it's this motherfucker sitting across from you. All right? Okay?
Still
and
alive in the
I
wild.
shook. All right?
Yeah.
David Henry Huang's hand. And
You
because
didn't get that vibe.
he wrote a play about Bruce Lee a few years ago. And then the fight choreographer took some lessons from me for the Wing Chun stuff.
Yeah.
All right? And then so they gave me some tickets, and then I went there and I met Mr. Huang and shook his hand and talked to him a little bit about
He didn't
Bruce
have
Lee.
a hairpiece.
And then I left. And I'll tell you, I did not leave that going like, damn, that guy gave a Bruce Lee vibe. I think that guy might secretly be Bruce Lee. No, all right? So anyway, are we ever going to get to this guy's question? So the eternal thought experiment. All right, sorry, Mark. All right? The eternal thought experiment is always what would Bruce Lee have done? So now the question is about the notes. All right, Bruce Lee had all of these notes. A majority of them were written during the time that he had hurt his back, where he was kind of laid up, and he took that time to
What else are you going to do?
take his favorite books
Yeah.
and kind of start postulating thoughts and stuff like that for Jeet Kune Do. Now, of course, what Bruce didn't anticipate is that, one, he would die 2 years later, and 3 years after that, these notes would be sold as a book, all right? These were notes that he took from other sources. This was not original work. So then James Bishop's book, which is basically a source book, it shows where all those notes come from, rightly gives the credit to those authors that Bruce Lee got that information from, right? And then the big problem is, well, did Bruce Lee plagiarize this stuff? And it's like, well, these were his personal notes, not meant for publication. The Lee estate definitely overstepped their bounds when they first sold the book, because they sold the book as if it were the original writings of Bruce Lee, which they're certainly not, all right? I think during my interview with Dr. James Bishop, I think he said maybe now only 10% or less of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do he has not found a source for, which means if there's anything that Bruce Lee did contribute himself, it would be about less than 10% of the book now, all right? But again, that wasn't a book. Those were his notes.
Yeah.
Okay? If you looked at my notes that I have written about other books, you would also find 100% of it is not my thought, because those are my notes from other books. All right? It's just a question of whether I croak and then someone publishes those as my original work. And that was the problem with the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. That was more on the estate. That's not on Bruce Lee. I don't know if Bruce Lee would have published that stuff later, because, I mean, obviously those were not his notes, so we have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he wouldn't just take the philosophy of Krishnamurti and Alan Watts and Eric Hoffer and, the boxing stuff from the Hazlitt books and from all those fencing books and just go, yeah, this is my book here, Jeet Kune Do, there you go. He didn't really seem to be that, at some point early in Bruce's career, he had expressed, like in the Seattle era,
maybe building a chain of kung fu schools around the States to teach his method. And then he very quickly over time changed his tune on that. I think seeing that it's not easy to teach these kind of martial arts en masse, and he kind of abandoned that. So by the time he was teaching Jeet Kune Do, when he had actually had formulated that name, I don't think he had really had any big plans on having Jeet Kune Do franchises everywhere. And it seemed as his life rolled on, he was less and less interested. He had closed schools down. He had handed over to schools to his assistants, and for example, Taki Kimura, who was teaching in Seattle, was teaching privately. I don't even think he was charging, and he was only teaching like a couple people. So the idea wasn't to be evangelical about Jeet Kune Do. It was kind of to try to keep it on the DL, like an insider thing.
Wow.
Same with Dan Inosanto, and James Yim Lee, of course, the other guy who was authorized to teach Jeet Kune Do, passed away before Bruce did, which meant that it was really just on Taki and Dan Inosanto. And it seemed that as Bruce focused more and more on his movie career, I think he was less interested in the advancement of Jeet Kune Do as a household name within the martial arts world. So it's difficult to say, because when you think about when you have this thought experiment, you have to, it's multivalent. You have to look at it from a bunch of different perspectives. Okay, so if Bruce Lee had not died and his movie career continued to thrive, he made a few more hits, and then most likely Bruce wanted to start working behind the camera. So let's say Bruce made like 3 more just bangers, all right? And then he starts directing, and he starts doing other things and other work. And let's say he has a very good career path. I think he would then even be less inclined to give a shit about publishing books on Jeet Kune Do and stuff like that. Wow. I think he would maybe, because he's earning his money as a, in the film world, in Hollywood, whatever. So what's the money in martial arts? All right. I mean, I don't really think he would have done it, right? In order for Bruce to kind of go back to Jeet Kune Do and think about writing books and expanding on the teaching, his movie career would probably have to take a dip. Damn. So that's why when you have this thought experiment, for Bruce, in my opinion, and I could be totally wrong, I'm most likely wrong, it's a purely hypothetical situation, there's really no way to know this. If Bruce Lee were to put effort in his notes and try to publish that stuff, or formulate his own version of it and write books and stuff like that, I would be of the assumption that's because his movie career wasn't going where he wanted it to go. So because if his movie career continued to thrive, what would Bruce Lee's motivation? Bruce Lee was barely motivated to write books and compile his notes and teach and codify his curriculum, even though that might be against the nature of Jeet Kune Do, while he was still a broke-ass martial arts instructor.
Wow.
All right? Because, yes, of course, the whole nature of Jeet Kune Do, is it an open system, a closed system? Is it a group of techniques? Is it just a philosophy? All of these questions exist because Bruce Lee didn't really complete his work in terms of, as an instructor, really telling people what's what. That's why people still have those arguments today. So if he could not have been bothered to give a shit about that stuff while he was a broke Jeet Kune Do instructor, what gives you the impression he's going to give a shit about that when he's a rich movie guy? You understand? So his movie career would have to take a hard dip for him to like dust off ye old Jeet Kune Do notes and want to put that into the form of a book. Just my opinion. For me, Bruce Lee was someone who was incentivized by becoming a movie star, by becoming famous, all of those kind of things. And that was always the priority. He would have to have that primary aim taken away. Look at his definite chief aim that he wrote, which is an exercise from Napoleon Hill's book. I, Bruce Lee, will be the highest paid Oriental, his words, Oriental superstar. And, by 1980, whatever, he's going to have this much money and all that kind of stuff. He didn't say anything about Jeet Kune Do in there. He didn't say anything about the advancement of the understanding of philosophy of martial arts or his own particular martial art. He's going to be a superstar. He's going to be the highest paid action star, movie star, whatever words he used in there. I don't remember exactly. That was his definite chief aim. That was his Napoleon Hill. That's from the book Think and Grow Rich. You create this definite chief aim and you read it every day and you make this thing your mantra.
Have you written your definite chief aim?
You know what? I read that book a long time ago, and I did create my Definite Chi fame.
Is it still around?
No,
Is
it was to have a fledgling podcast with someone dressed like a bumblebee.
Well done.
So you-
by the 100th episode.
By the
Achieved.
100th episode,
You've achieved.
You got
I've
your
achieved
wish.
it.
Yeah.
I got my wish. So there you are. That's a great question.
Took a
but-
while.
But that question really depends on what would Bruce's trajectory have been had he not passed away. I think he only would have come back to Jeet Kune Do and the martial arts world if his movie career failed. All right. What's the next question?
Let me just. So you have Bruce Lee, who's an
This is what I
artist.
mean. Why he has to be able to take over the KFG podcast because he's suddenly Dre's got his own thoughts.
Look, he's
All
an
right, let's go.
artist. He's an artist at heart.
Yes, for
his,
sure.
His medium, his main medium is, I guess, motion pictures or acting, or not acting, but motion picture.
Yes.
And
You saying
I
Bruce
guess,
wasn't a good actor?
What?
You saying Bruce wasn't a good
No,
actor?
I think he was.
Actually, I think
good
he's a very
actor.
good actor. Yeah.
He's a good actor because he's done it so
Yeah,
long.
you're right.
But he was more of like just the creation of it. That was his medium.
Yes.
Right. But martial arts was his other passion.
Right.
Right. His other medium. And like, what? Damn. My question is, okay, you're saying that if he didn't have if he didn't have the movies, he would not.
He would have to go back to
He
martial
would
arts.
have to go back to martial arts.
Because that's his
But
only other
that
marketable
wasn't
skill.
his passion.
No, it's not what he wanted to do.
Holy
You know, I just
shit.
finished someone who listens to our podcast regularly, Paul Bax. He's he's an author, supposed Jeet Kune Do and Bruce Lee expert. He very kindly sent me a bunch of his books, and his books were used as source material for even for Matt Pauly's book. In fact, the first time I came across Paul Bax's books was when I was looking in the back at Matt Pauly's bibliography for his big book. Like I was like, where are the sources for? Because he sources where he gets everything, right? And I started to see Paul Bax's books in there, and Paul Bax did a number of books where he interviewed students of Bruce Lee. But long form interviews, or say multiple interviews over multiple years, which is really great because you can kind of see, for example, he did Jesse Glover, and then he had shorter interviews with people like Ed Hart and James DeMille, like the Seattle period students, and these Skip Ellsworth, Doug Palmer, all those guys.
Yeah.
And then, but also like people like Steve Golden, who I also know, Big Sean Madigan's Jeet Kune Do Sifu, and then so he has a couple of them. He's got books where it's just the one student, and then he has a couple which kind of compiles a bunch of interviews. And what's really great is that you really get an impression from reading these interviews, especially when you see these guys talk about Bruce Lee over time, for kind of a feeling for him, because they are, you have like 5 guys from the Seattle era describe what Bruce Lee was like. And whenever you have those kind of contemporary accounts of one person, you're going to have variations between them. So, James DeMille's look on or take on Bruce Lee during the Seattle period is a little bit different than Jesse Glover's, and Jesse Glover and Ed Hart are kind of similar to each other. And Doug Palmer has a slightly different viewpoint because he wasn't one of like the hardcore students of Bruce Lee, but he was close enough to Bruce Lee to travel with Bruce Lee to Hong Kong in the early 60s. So he actually went to Hong Kong with Bruce Lee and stayed at Bruce Lee's home. So he has a totally different perspective. So when you read these different perspectives of people who knew Bruce Lee at the same time, you see it's kind of like those films where they tell the same story but from 5 different viewpoints.
Okay.
And you realize when you see the story from different viewpoints, it's almost like a different
parallels.
story.
Yeah. Oh,
no, it's like a different story.
Okay.
Because humans are kind
They knew 'em
of
differently.
humans are complex.
Yeah.
And for example, your relationship with me. All right. The way you know me, we've traveled together to Hong Kong. There was a time period during the pandemic. You lived with me. You know what I mean? Like, so we've known each other for a number of years very well. But I have students, for example, who have been around longer than you have. But I haven't spent as much time personally with them. And they might know me
as a martial arts instructor longer than you.
Yeah.
But they maybe don't necessarily know certain things you know because you've spent so much time with me, right? But that doesn't invalidate their perspective or
not at all.
invalidate yours. It just means that the glimpse we get to see of the people in our lives is the window they present us. And it's not always the whole picture, and it's not always, and it's also viewed through our own lens and our own biases, right? But what I like about that stuff is you see James DeMille, Ed Hart, Jesse Glover, Skip Ellsworth, Doug Palmer, all these guys have kind of their own little mini takes on Bruce Lee. But what you realize is they all have a bunch of things that are in common. Okay? Even if they express it differently, when they talk about Bruce's character or what Bruce thought about certain things, you start to pick up on some themes that they all say in common. And what a lot of people tend to focus on, because we're so polarized in today's society, are the things where, well, James DeMille has this take on Bruce Lee, which is totally at odds with, let's say, what Jesse Glover said. I'm just making a generic example. And people harp on those differences. Well, is that because James DeMille's relationship with Bruce Lee? Is that because James DeMille was more of a marketer and Jesse Glover wasn't? Mm-hmm. You know, is there another reason why James DeMille's story might be like this because he's more of a self-promoter or whatever? And then I don't focus too much on that because there are a number of reasons why contemporary accounts of the same person by different people will naturally be different. You have a different perspective. You see people at a different time of the day. If you see me in the morning, you would have a different perspective about me, like if you saw me later in the day. All right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in the morning, I'm very quiet. I don't really talk much for the first few hours.
Right.
I'm like very thinking about what I'm going to do. I do my morning exercises. I don't like to be bothered. I don't like to waste time in the morning. Yeah. So if there were a group of people...
a different face on, too.
If there were a group of people who knew me mostly in the morning compared to at nighttime, even within the same time period, it's like you're almost dealing with a different person, right? But what you really need to do if you want to do honest research is you need to pick up all the things that everyone says the same. And then when you start to see like these 5 Seattle era guys, they might not have the same perspective on XYZ, but ABC is the same. And then you look later, those people who knew Bruce Lee in Los Angeles a few years later, they have a different view of Bruce Lee because he was doing Jeet Kune Do. His martial art was a little bit different. It was a different time in his development from the Seattle era. But Steve Golden says ABC the same way that the Seattle guy said ABC. And then you start to go, I think ABC is true about Bruce Lee. But everyone is always fretting about the other points that are different because of different perspectives, different time periods. And people tend to get caught in the weeds of those arguments, which are not supportable or defensible arguments because you're talking about people in different time periods and so on. So what's really fantastic about Paul Bax's books is because you're basically just listening to these different accounts of people who knew Bruce Lee. He asks a lot of the same questions over multiple years, and you start to see the consistency in their answers or inconsistencies sometimes. And what you start to do is you filter out what are the things that all of them said. All right? So that long-winded kind of preamble notwithstanding, it's very clear Bruce Lee did not really like teaching. That is one thing that you get from all of his students.
Wow.
Okay? That he, his early period students, people like Jesse Glover was under no illusion that he wasn't basically just kind of a training dummy for Bruce Lee. He had judo experience. He was bigger. He was stronger. He was Bruce's first student. Bruce was trying shit out on him, much more so than Bruce was trying to teach Jesse Glover. And the same could be said for a number of Bruce Lee's early students. And they got the vibe that later when he started teaching, he was just a little scattered. He wasn't very organized. And he, quite frankly, didn't like teaching. So when you understand that, that's like the vibe you get from listening to all of these different period students of his. That, it's like, I asked Steve Golden directly about, like, what was it like training with Bruce Lee? I was like, what was a regular class like? And when he explained to me certain things, I realized, Bruce taught kind of in a very disorganized
Hong Kong style kind of way, where it's like you just kind of work on what the Sifu feels like working on. There's no like linear progression for the student, no step by step. And for some people that's okay, but like if you really want to transmit skills, you need to have some kind of plan, some kind of program. Movement can be taught step by step, broken down, and Bruce was kind of, he said like they would put equipment on and they would spar with each other, and then Bruce would be like, no, you need to do it more. And then he would say, I'm just going to make up a word. You need to do it more artfully. I'm just totally making up a word. And then he would walk away. It's like, well, what does that mean? All right? There's no like thread or step-by-step thing. So if we look at that, and then we look at what Bruce's definite chief aim was, which was about being a very well-paid movie star. Mm-hmm. Bruce's student said he didn't like teaching. Bruce's definite chief aim was to be a big movie star. Would Bruce really give a shit about doing something with his notes afterwards? No. All right? I mean, I think his notes were really not that big of a deal. He was compiling it because maybe he thought he was just going to have to teach. He wasn't going to be able to do anything after his back injury or whatever. And then he made a very miraculous recovery.
Shit.
But think about it. At the time of Bruce Lee's death, Bruce Lee was not the juggernaut that he is today. Linda, I think, didn't really think that he was going to be some sustainable, iconic person that he later became. She thought like, oh, he's dead now. At the time of Bruce Lee's death, according to Linda, they were in financial distress because I believe there was a little bit of a kind of a Suge Knight Tupac thing going on between Raymond Chow and Bruce Lee, whereas a lot of the money that Bruce should have earned from Way of the Dragon, Raymond was kind of holding on to and was kind of, whenever Bruce would complain enough about the money, then Raymond would give him a little bit to kind of shut him up for a little bit and then kind of leave him there for a bit, right?
Damn.
So I think that at the time of Bruce Lee's death, Bruce Lee was not particularly rich or wealthy. And there was a lot of potential now because he had just made Enter the Dragon and all this kind of stuff. But at the time of Bruce Lee's death, I don't think he was sitting on tons of bags of cash. His house, I believe, was financed through Raymond Chow himself. The red SL Mercedes that he was driving, when you look at photos of that, it has dings all over it. All right. When you look at those like photos of him, at the Harbor Pier and all that kind of stuff, look at his car. There's dings on it. All right. Okay. Because that was Raymond Chow's old car. Raymond was like, "Oh, here, Bruce, here, have a Mercedes." Well, he probably went out and bought himself a new one with the money he earned off of Bruce Lee's films. You understand? And because Raymond paid a bunch of debts for Bruce, because when Bruce came to Hong Kong, Bruce was a little bit in debt with his mortgage and a few other things. So Raymond had to like put out some money for him to stay in an apartment, and then close to Kowloon Tong, but I totally forgot. He stayed in a really tiny Hong Kong apartment until Golden Harvest, from what I understood, financed that 41 Cumberland Road home. Yeah. Which is the reason why they still kind of had that after Bruce Lee's death, because I think Raymond Chow actually owned 41 Cumberland Road. I don't think that was even in Bruce Lee's name. So at the time of Bruce Lee's death, the liquid cash like available to him was not very high. So Linda, that's why she sold her stake of Concord Productions to Raymond Chow and basically gave up any kind of rights to any of Bruce's Hong Kong films and stuff like that. Enter the Dragon, although it was for Warner Brothers, because it was shot in Hong Kong on such a low budget, they shot it without SAG. So no one on there is like union, which meant also they're not getting any residuals. Sheesh. Okay? So it wasn't like Linda was going to get these like fat checks from Warner Brothers on the sales of Enter the Dragon. So she was kind of penniless. And then so that's why, 73 she sells, or 74 she sells the remaining interest of Concord, the 50% stake that Bruce Lee had, she sells it back to Raymond Chow. And she's kind of scrambling for like, how do we make some money here? And then in 75, so 2 years later, kind of compiles his notes and sells it as the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, as if this was a book that he had written, and he had not. So I think there's this assumption, because a book was put together after Bruce Lee's death, people are like, well, what would Bruce Lee have done with that had he not died? And I don't think he would have done anything. I think those just would have been his notes.
It would have just stayed his notes.
There is nothing in Bruce Lee's history to give even the slightest impression that he wanted to go back to being a martial arts instructor. He wanted to go back to teaching bong sao and straight leads for cash. All right? He didn't want to do that. All right? He didn't want to be the trainer to the stars. He wanted to be the star.
Yeah.
So I don't think he would have done anything with that. All right. What else you got for me, Dre?
All right, I'm sorry. This is amazing topic.
Yeah, our Patreons always have great questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, you can be really good at something.
You can.
Perhaps the best in the world.
Yes.
But that doesn't have to be your passion or be something that you even want to do.
Right.
But you're just so good at it that people demand it. People want to see you do it.
Right.
People want you to do it all the time, but
Right.
you hate doing it at some point.
I don't think Bruce hated doing martial arts. I think he was fanatical about doing
he loved
martial arts.
training.
Yeah, he loved training, but he wasn't into the teaching. Except, okay, maybe some Hollywood honey show or some sidekicks for some movie or something like that,
Yeah.
right? But in terms of like building a student from soup to nuts, like you're a beginner that doesn't know anything, and I'm going to build you up step by step and teach you punch step, okay, now, no. Well, he didn't have the patience for that. And that's fine. I mean, again, it's also the reason why not everyone who does martial arts should be an instructor. All right, not everyone here who is a technician is automatically an instructor, because you need to have a certain temperament to be an instructor, right? And sometimes really good practitioners of martial arts are not interested at all in teaching, and that's totally fine. Good fighters, good at fighting, don't want to teach, and some people do a little bit of both, right? And I think that because that was not his passion at all, but that's kind of one of the few avenues to make money in martial arts, right? Which is why I always find... every year they have that martial arts convention in Atlantic City, all right? It's like the action martial arts, something like that. And it's put together by, some really cool people. Like, I mean, I get it. It's a business, right? It's basically a convention. You have vendors in Atlantic City and selling martial arts stuff. And then they get a bunch of celebrities there, Cynthia Rothrock and, my good friend Vincent Lin. All those guys go there. You can meet the celebrities and stuff. And every year I get an invite to go to that stuff, right? And every year I don't go to that thing, all right? Because part of it is like it's also like a so-called Hall of Fame, and it's like, dear Sifu Alex Richter, you have been inducted to the Action Martial Arts Hall of Fame, and like you can go and pick up your Hall of Fame trophy, if you go to this dinner and you pay like $100 a head or something like for dinner. So what you see basically, it's like you go to this banquet and you're paying $100 a head. And then they give you some Hall of Fame thing that you now share with thousands of other people, right? As a matter of fact, Vincent once told me 1 year they were giving out so many Hall of Fame, which is funny because shouldn't like being put in the Hall of Fame, first of all, shouldn't that go to like one person a year, right? For like your tremendous achievement, right?
1 to 2.
Yeah, 1 to 2, right?
Yeah.
Maybe different categories, right? And he said 1 year, like they had, so many people who are part of the Hall of Fame, that they had a line all the way where people were just picking up their trophy and then leave, pick up trophy and leave. Like they couldn't go up and say something because there was too many of them, because they're just selling this thing, right? And those people spent most of the time standing in line during the time when they were supposed to eat. And yeah,
This is time for Bizarro KFG. I'll pay $100 a head to watch you go and accept an award as the KFG.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's if I said I accepted it and I just sent you in my place, I don't think anyone would notice.
Wow.
Right? And so the thing is, so what you realize, it's not really a Hall of Fame, all right?
Man.
You don't go like, oh, I'm in the Action Martial Arts Hall of Fame and this is something prestigious. You're like you and thousands of other people, right? And sometimes, I'm on Facebook, so I see people, like, yo, I'm in the Hall of Fame or whatever, and these are people who have no students, no schools, have basically done nothing, barely practiced. Like no one regards them as anything special in whatever martial art they do, but they will, instead of spending $100 on their education to get a private lesson or to get a subscription for a few bucks a month to learn something, they will spend hundreds of dollars to drive down to Atlantic City to pick up some trophy that says that they're part of a Hall of Fame for an achievement that there is no achievement. They got a letter like hundreds of other people, right?
Sheesh.
And the other reason why I don't go to that, besides the fact that, like, look, if it's an actual Hall of Fame, and you're nominating me for something, for whatever reason. First of all, like for what? I've been in business for 20 years as a Wing Chun guy in the age of MMA. Is there a Hall of Fame for that?
Oh,
all right.
man.
The one guy who can teach professionally in the age of MMA, right? What are you putting me in the Hall of Fame for? What have I done? I'm 45. Was my life done? Did I really accomplish everything I want to do, right? No, probably, right? So, I know you
Chief
hate
Aim.
that, right?
Chief
Chief
Aim.
Aim, right? Chief Aim was his 100th episode with Bumblebee. you know, like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, what is the Hall of Fame? What is this? And also, I don't need this kind of external gratification. And you realize, like, there are people on my Facebook, like they're so proud of this thing that they paid for. And these are not martial artists that are known the world over for doing anything. And I go, like, this is what you got into martial arts for, was to get some fake trophy for some fake Hall of Fame, right? So I don't believe in that, so I don't go to it. But the other reason is because I find those kind of martial art conventions depressing. Because in my opinion, they are the graveyard of martial art careers, all right? In martial arts, there's only a finite number of ways you can earn money in martial arts. Yeah. Okay? There's really 3 primary ways you can earn martial arts, money in martial arts, I should say. First one is you're a martial arts competitor, all right? And the problem with that is there's not that much money in martial arts competitions. I mean, even in UFC, unless you're a really high-level UFC person, you're not even really earning big bucks.
Man,
I mean, I know a couple UFC fighters who are at the, like, say, the lower tier, and I know what they earn. And when you think about how hard they have to train and how long they have to train and how much they have to pay their trainers and everything, and by the time they get this, it's really not a lot of money that these guys are earning, right? But for lack of a better option, competitive martial arts is one avenue to earn money with martial arts. Second avenue to earn money with martial arts is to go into entertainment, all right, to be a movie star, whatever.
Like
right?
Masiheng.
Yeah. Now, that is also very difficult because, you know, especially nowadays with YouTube, you have so many people out there who can do cool acrobatic stuff or whatever. Like, no one is really a star anymore. You have Scott Adkins, you know, a couple guys in Asia, right? Tony Jaa can still pull it through. Obviously, Donnie Yen, those guys. But it's only a handful of people where you go, those are like the current Mount Rushmore of martial art guys for making movies now. It's not a lot. And there are a lot of people who are trying to go there, and the competition is too great. So you have that. And then the third way to earn money with martial arts is to teach it, right? Obviously, there's a fourth way you could sell martial art products or something like that, right? But in terms of you yourself being a martial artist, you're either going to make money competing, you're going to make money in film and entertainment, or you're going to make money teaching, all right? Of the 3, teaching is obviously the most sustainable of all of them, right? If you're a movie star, you might only be a movie star for a few years. If you're a competitor, you might only be a competitor for a few years. So when you go to these conventions, you see an inordinate high or very high proportion of people from the first 2 categories, which are former competitors, and some former competitors later went on into entertainment, people like Don the Dragon Wilson, stuff like that, right? Some people are just former competitors and never did anything after that. You know, your Chuck Liddells and stuff like that. And then you have movie people, but usually the people who go to those conventions are not old. You do occasionally get Scott Adkins going to those things, but these are the people whose movie careers they're winding down, all right? And so what you see very little of at those martial art conventions are people who teach martial arts for a living, because they're usually busy teaching martial arts for a living. They're not trying to become a movie star, and they're not a competitor or former competitor or whatever, right? So when you go to these martial art conventions, it's just this really bizarre mix of those first 2 categories: former competitors who are trying to relive their glory days, and former washed-up movie stars who are trying to relive their old movie days. Now, of course, you see some really cool people at those things, like Cynthia Rothrock, and like people who are really awesome and still doing awesome stuff. But here's where I'm going to be an entitled KFG guy. If I want to spend time with Cynthia Rothrock, I can twist Vincent Lin's arm enough to see if she can come and visit. We can go grab something to eat like we've done before, right? Yeah. I don't have to go to a convention in Atlantic City to take a photo in a booth with her. You know what I mean? So I find those kind of 3 avenues, the main ones. And when you go to those conventions, there's no one there who really teaches martial arts. There are just people from the first 2 categories, and it just feels like a graveyard of martial art careers, right? And I remember many years ago, the one time I did go to Atlantic City during that time, happened to be because there was a martial arts business convention in Atlantic
You got
City.
the Hall of Fame.
No, it was a martial arts business convention where they were
Okay.
teaching, how to do business and, how to do advertising for your martial arts school. And I went down for that. And it happened to be in Atlantic City on the same weekend as the Action Martial Arts Festival. And that was more of a reinforcement why I don't go to those things. I remember walking through one of the casinos in Atlantic City, and there's like all these martial art dorks who are there for the convention. And there was one guy, an older guy, and he was just something like, a Meridote, like Enter the Dojo, Master Ken, like he's a parody of a lot of those guys. But I'll tell you, the Master Ken thing, the Meridote and 1,000 Ways to Restomp the Groin, he's really playing it very close to what those guys kind of actually really are like. When you watch those Master Ken parodies, like he's maybe just amplifying it 5% to where a lot of them American karate guys are like, yeah, I'm an 18th degree black belt in Kinjitsu, Tiger Form, Kenpo, Karate, Kung Fu. Yeah. And I have 18 black belts and blah, blah, blah. And like, you attack me, I'm going to break your groin and then re-stomp it and then break your arm, right? And one of those guys was like walking in the middle of a casino, right? And you just see, it was the most depressing shit I had ever seen. I'm walking through an Atlantic City casino, which is already a depressing feeling in and of itself. Yeah. And there's all these like old, middle-aged and older people pissing their money away. Just pissing their money away, hoping, and you just go like, oh man, in these years of your life, you need to be saving your money. You need to not be pissing your money away, right? And then there's this guy walking through there, going to the convention, and the dude is like, and he's an older guy. He's got like a gray beard. He's got like, gray hair. He's wearing frickin' sunglasses from the 70s, and he's wearing this like orange gi with like stripes on it and patches all down the side. It says Grandmaster on the back in that fake Chinese takeout lettering. No. And he has a patch in the front that says Grandmaster Bob. All right? And I walk by and I look at this and I go, Jesus Christ, this is exactly why I don't go to these things. Like what are these pod people, right? You want to be part of this Hall of Fame, right? And then I go into the into the class, we're taking that was Stephen Oliver. He was like teaching us. He's like a high level dude when it comes to marketing and stuff. And he was sitting there and he goes like, yeah, I mean, look, there were like 10 people who did that marketing class, right? And none of those people were people who are participating in the Atlantic City weekend of hot nonsense, right? And he said, look, there are all these guys here with, 28th degree black belts and all this kind of stuff. Many of them might have schools and only a few students, and not a single one of them is investing in their education to better themselves as a business owner, as a leader of a school, as a leader of students. They're here to pick up a trophy so they can then put it on Facebook that they're part of a Hall of Fame. And that's not going to win them any new students. And then you start to see like this is what people are investing in. Instead of investing in their own education, investing in themselves, they're investing in external gratification. Sheesh. People like they ask me like to join these things or if I want these awards or whatever. It's like I didn't get into martial arts for any of that stuff. I have all these certificates on the wall that I got from different places or whatever. That's great. I have way more certificates than what I have on the wall back there. Just the certificates
Not
I
enough
earned.
wall space.
Well, those are the certificates I earned through my Wing Chun from my various teachers, right? I have all sorts of other certificates that have been given to me from all sorts of. Like, they're sitting in a box somewhere. This is not why I did martial arts. I appreciate it when people appreciate things that I've done, but I don't do it for that. The martial arts is a lot more personal for me than that, right? So I think that Bruce Lee was definitely someone who had kind of one track in terms of what he wanted to do. And one thing that I am happy about, or I'm not happy about him dying, but I'm saying one thing that we never needed to see was Bruce Lee sitting at a convention at a desk selling his autograph for $50. Okay? Because in the
that is crazy.
In the kind of like multiple tree branches of possibilities.
Yeah.
All right. That thing we went to a few weeks ago with Bolo. An 80-something-year-old Bruce Lee very well could be sitting in one of those rooms going, like, yeah, I did this movie Enter the Dragon back then. Do you remember? Oh, right, yeah. Remember that Kung Fu fad from the 70s, right? What? And there's Bruce Lee right there.
God.
Yeah.
What?
And
Right next to Ty Mark.
Right next to Ty Mach, right? No, there would have been no Last Dragon without Bruce Lee's death.
Yeah.
There'd be no Ty Mach either.
Oh my God.
All right. So I think we got time for one more quick one.
Are you an instructor from the WT Wing Chun line and are confused about aspects of your Wing Chun training? Do you have questions about application, Guo Sao, Lat Sao, or how to train or teach Chi Sao? Do you need help with your curriculum or just guidance to push past your current skill level? Please consider coming to Florida and doing an immersion course with me. Immersion courses are 20 private lessons taught in 5 days in a very serious and intensive manner. These are done in my Florida home so you can stay there and focus on your training in the sunshine. Courses are individually crafted to your needs after we have a consultation. No politics, no nonsense, just serious training. Click the link in the description of this episode to find out more about immersion training with me in Florida. I'm currently filling up spots for March and April of 2023, so apply today to get one of those dates. Spots are limited because of my schedule, so book before the end of February 2023. Again, the link for immersion training in Florida is in the description below, and I'll see you in the sunshine.
Make it a quickie. Personally, I'd just like to say I got into martial arts for the tail.
Definitely in the wrong place.
I am moving. I gotta move forward from
All right.
that. Mark Pinder. Would you
We got
rather
another Patreon.
Yeah.
We're all Patreon today.
That's-
I love it.
That's what's up.
It's just Patreon
That's how we
episode.
do it.
Yeah, that's how we do it. Yeah.
100th episode.
Yeah.
Deserving.
I mean, Patreon guys always get first dibs. So that's why, when people do want their questions, because I get people send me questions all the time. I'm like, well, you got to put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But if you want to guarantee that we'll answer it, you got to join Patreon.
If you're picking a Patreon question, there's a possibility that this is going to take longer than 5 minutes.
Not really.
It's a short
watch,
one?
Watch.
Okay,
You'll
watch.
see.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm watching.
Well, if Dre
see.
answered it, it'd be short.
It will be short and sweet.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just like me.
Yeah. It might, his answers might not look like much, but they're really short. All right, go for it.
God damn. Would you rather not be a Bruce Lee fan and never know of Beardy's existence? Or be a Bruce Lee fan and live with the fact that he has a bigger following than you?
That's great. That's great. No, the fact that Beardy has a bigger following than me doesn't bother me. I mean, it's one of those things.
It's one of those things.
Well, it just shows you the power of bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the size that matters, it's what you do with it that counts.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Whoa.
Exactly. Right. No. I mean, it doesn't.
It's the substance.
It doesn't. But there's no
The
substance.
quality.
There's no substance to Beardy. He's a bullshit artist. I heard recently people keep sending me Beardy stuff. I guess they think I give a crap because we occasionally make those videos. It's a public service announcement. Please don't send me Beardy videos
they
because
want us to attack it.
I won't watch them. I don't watch them. The only time I
You don't
ever
wanna mess
watch
up your algorithm?
only time I ever watch Beardy videos are when we do those live reactions. Because one, I want the reaction to be live and
Live,
spontaneous,
yeah.
not like I saw this video already and I kind of know what I'm going to say. And also, I don't want his crap showing up on my algorithm. So whenever, even when we do watch the Beardy stuff for like our episodes, I log out of my YouTube so that doesn't go onto my YouTube algorithm because I don't want that crap on there.
Oh, that's smooth.
Yeah, I don't want that crap on there because it's garbage.
Slick.
And people ask me, like, what do you think about Beardy's video? First of all, you already fucked up with asking me, what do I think about Beardy's video? I don't think about Beardy's video. Because, like, we clown him because it's good content. It's funny. But I don't spend any of my time thinking about Beardy's content because he actually has no content. No one is looking at Beardy's videos and going, like, I wonder what Beardy's take is on this because he's literally just making shit up. I heard because people send me all the time. They keep sending me this stuff. It's like, how do I put this politely? I don't give a fuck. I don't like Beardy has already shown himself to be a serial liar, to be a fantasist, to be someone who makes up stories about himself, about Bruce Lee, and he knows how to do the clickbait thing. That's why he's got a big channel. But it's not because he's the authority on Bruce Lee. He literally isn't a
masturbator.
All right, he's a masturbator, right?
Master at it.
But someone sent me the other day, like, oh, he just posted that video, the Nokia commercial with the ping pong with the nunchucks. and claimed that was in fact Bruce Lee. So the problem is that when
I have to see it now.
when you see something like that, or you hear that he did a video on that, like, look, man, I'm gonna be dead one day. All right, I'm not gonna waste my time watching this stuff. All right,
I'm gonna do it.
no, I mean, it's literally a waste of time, because it's not like you go, oh, well, that's an interesting point about Bruce Lee. There are no interesting points to get from Beardy's channel. He's a liar. He makes shit up. Okay, it's not like you watch someone who has an alternate take on Bruce Lee, maybe like some Bruce Lee haters out there who think, Bruce Lee wouldn't have done very well in a modern martial arts environment or whatever. Like, okay, you can get upset about that because you're a Bruce Lee fan, but at least those people are having a substantive conversation about something that you can go back and forth. Beardy is not a Bruce Lee fan. He's someone making money off of Bruce Lee because he doesn't even know basic shit like that Dan Inosanto is not a Kempo grandmaster, okay? So there's no there, all right? There's nothing to dig into on Beardy's channel. There's nothing, okay? The fact that he's on YouTube doesn't mean you have to now make this part of your life, all right? And that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius, like this episode, and if you have any questions for me to answer in a future episode, go ahead and put them in the comments below. But if you want to guarantee I'll answer that, join our Patreon page, in which the link is also below. By the way, KFG t-shirts are available now. The link is also below. And I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm Seagung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex, Richter, always the victor.
Good.
All right, so this is episode, 101?
I believe so.
No.
So,
Yeah.
You're lying.
He needs to be on episode 100.
I know, it's a diva.
Jesus.
Genuinely
Blah. All right, peeps.
martial arts questions.
All right,
Today's-
listen to me, Dre.
Okay.
All right.
This is gonna be a shit show.
Yep.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the. Peeps. On today's 100th episode of the Kung Fu Genius.
His ability to fail so fast after going through it correctly is
No.
incredible.
Yeah.
All right, shut up. The Genius will be answering all the dope questions from the Patreons. All right, peeps.
What's with the clap?
I know.
What? You've got the clap?
No, you got the clap.
You don't have
Dre's got the clap. We were listening to Wilford Brimley before the episode. Someone turned his whole diabetes shtick into a hip hop rap.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Diabetes.
All right, come on, Bumblebee, let's go.
Transform in my head.
Yeah. Why don't you transform here in real time? All right, let's go.
All right, peeps. On today's 100th episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the Genius will be answering all dope questions from the patrons. Patreon.
Patrons.
All right, peeps. Hada banga. Everybody do the hada
Yo,
banga.
he's got to be at work at 11. Don't make me beat that Bumblebee ass.
All right, people. All right, people, Bryson. All right, peeps. On today's hada banga. All right, peeps. On today's episode.
Dre, do you just want me to do it?
No. Or me.
No, I can do it.
I can do it.
I can do it.
I'm doing
No,
it.
you can't.
All right, peeps. On today's 100th episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the Genius will be answering all dope questions from the Patreons. Lots of gems, lots of depressing moments. Depressing martial arts conventions.
Do you want me to do it?
Lots of
I'll do it.
depressing
Yo,
martial arts.
Dre,
No, I'm
let
gonna
me do it.
I-
It's a Bumblebee ass.
All right, peeps. On today's episode, all right, peeps. All right.
It's getting worse.
That was good. That was good.
AFT. About fucking time.
All of that.
100.
100 episodes.
Yay!
Yeah.
And we've been canceled.